Hello everyone, welcome to the Forum IAS Townhall, the newspaper analysis. Today's date is 6th of November 2025. We are going to discuss the 5 articles from the Hindu. The first article is about the COP30, the Belem Summit, the moment of the truth. In this article, as we know that the Brazil is hosting the COP30, that is the United Nations Climate Change Convention, and this article talks about that what are the issues right now we are facing in our climate change initiatives and these types of conventions, the debates around it, and what are the various highlight of this summit. The next article we are going to discuss is about the death on move, that is on regarding the road accident. As we are seeing that there is an increased cases of road accident nowadays. So what are the reasons behind this? And what could be the recommendation we can have it so that we can reduce those road accidents. The next article is about the malleable code of conduct. So basically it talks about the model code of conduct with, as we know that the Bihar election is going on and we have seen that there are some allegations of violation of model code of conduct. So this article talks about that what exactly the model code of conduct is and how we are seeing that the violation and the enforceabilities of the model code of conduct. So is it a viable option right now or do we have to make the recommendation? So various debates around this. The next article is about what constitutes a contempt of court in India. As we know that recently there were some remarks has been made against the Chief Justice of India. So in this context, this talks about the provisions of contempt of court and what is the procedure of initiating the process of contempt of court in India. The last article we are going to discuss is about the challenges facing the upcoming income survey. So recently the Indian government had decided to conduct a household income survey. So it has been piloted, tested in randomly in some cities with some various households. So what are the challenges we have faced in conducting this income surveys that we are going to discuss and the relevance that why we need the household income survey at this stage. So let's start with our newspaper discussion. So the first news article is regarding in Brazil, the COP30, the moment of truth. So as we know that the 30th United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP30, is going to be hosted by Brazil in the Amazon forest, that is a Belem summit. The reason why we are conducting this conference in Amazon forest is because that it's symbolizing the direct engagement with the climate realities. If we go within a historical context about the COP30 and the link of the Brazil, we know that in 1992, we conducted the Earth Summit in Brazil itself. So after 3 decades, we are returning back to the Brazil. In 1992, in the Earth Summit, there were 3 conventions adopted. And these were the very key global environmental conventions. What were those? The first one was the Convention on Climate Change. Another one was Convention on Biological Diversity. And third one was the Convention on Combating the Desertification. Here in this article, a debate has been discussed. The debate about the global south versus the developed country. This is that the debate is centering about the issues of climate justice. As we know that the climate change is going to impact everyone. It's not something like that it's going to impact few people or not others. Or we can say as the climate is going to impact everyone, so it's a responsibility of everyone to fight against this climate change. But the question arises that how we are going to assign the responsibilities. The responsibilities cannot be assigned equally because those who has contributed in the climate change more has to take up the more responsibility. For example, the developed countries. We know that the developed countries through their industrial revolution in 19th century, they taken up the advantages they developed themselves, but they were the major contributor for the greenhouse gas emission which impacted our climate. So this concept talks about that there should be a recognition of principle of common but differential responsibilities. Though the fight against climate change is a responsibility of everyone, but it has to be differentiated responsibilities. The developed countries should take up more responsibility. So in this idea, with this idea, what they are trying to say that we know about the climate finances, because to fight against the climate, we need certain finance. So the contribution of the developed countries should be more in comparison to the developing countries. Though the developing countries should contribute, but the developed countries should take proactive and contribute in that proportion. So that's the whole idea about this the debate versus in this it is talking about global south versus developed nations. The highlight of this convention is that there is a launch of Tropical Forest Forever facility. This is basically a global investment fund. It's not a donation mechanism. The Tropical Forest Forever facility will reward those who keep their forest standing and those who invest in the fund. So it's basically to create a win-win approach to tackle the climate change. Brazil has announced that it will invest $1 billion in the TFFF, that is Tropical Forest Forever facility. There was another announcement that was Declaration on Hunger, Poverty and Climate. Basically, the idea is to linking the climate fight with the poverty eradication. It's talked about that around 2 billion people lack access to the clean technologies and fuels for cooking, and 673 million still live with a hunger. And in response, they will be launch the Declaration on Hunger, Poverty and Climate, because their commitment is to fight the global warming must be directly linked to the fight against hunger. So we have to fight against the climate along with our eradicating the hunger and poverty. Now, apart from that, there is also a proposal to create a UN Climate Change Council. Basically, it will be more similar to like United Nations General Assembly, but it will have more force and legitimacy. The idea to create the UN Climate Change Council is to monitor and enforce the climate commitments made by various member countries. So that's all from this article. Let's move to our next news article, that is the death on move. The article revolves around the road accident. So as we know that recently on November 3, there was a highway accident near Hyderabad where 19 lives has been claimed. So 19 people died. If we go by the facts and the data, India records more than 400 daily road deaths, equivalent to a major air crash every day. And who are the top victims? The top victims are pedestrians, bike passengers, and two-wheeler riders. The main cause behind this road accident is, as per the government data, is human error. Around 80% of the cases are because of human error. But there are other factors also, like poor road design, weak enforcement, and inadequate vehicle safety standard. Let's dive into a more detailed one, the issues regarding the road accidents. So if we go with the systematic issues, the first one is the licensing flaws. We know that in India, the driving test is more emphasized on vehicle handling, not on the safe driving behavior. मतलब आपको बस गाड़ी पकड़ना आता है, चलाना आता है, उस पर हम लोग फोकस करते हैं. हम ड्राइविंग लाइसेंस जो हम देते हैं उस बेस पर देते हैं कि आप गाड़ी चला सकते हो कि नहीं चला सकते हो. वी आर नॉट कंसर्न्ड अबाउट द सेफ ड्राइविंग बिहेवियर, कि आप रैश ड्राइविंग कर रहे हो. वो सब चीजों को हम लोग ध्यान नहीं देते हैं व्हेन वी आर गिविंग द ड्राइविंग लाइसेंस. Another one, there is no mandatory road safety training and awareness modules are required. And the RTO functioning. We all know that how the RTO functions. So the RTO functioning remains manual, opaque, and often corrupt. So because these are the licensing flaws. Another flaws is the infrastructure gap. There is an absence of dividers, street lights, signage on national highways, as seen in the Chevella near Hyderabad, where this recent accident happened. And along with this, there is non-adherence to the Indian Road Congress safety guidelines. So we are not following the Indian Road Congress safety guidelines. There is a lack of crash barriers, pothole maintenance, and proper drainage system. You might have heard and seen that major accidents happen during the rainy season because of poor drainage and the pothole maintenance. कि गाड़ियां जाती हैं और पता नहीं चलता और वहां पर गाड़ियां गिर जाती हैं और काफी डैमेज होता है, especially the two-wheelers. Another one is a poor pedestrian infrastructure increases the urban fatalities. In most of the cities, we have seen that there is a lack of facilities for the pedestrians. जो bystander जो है पैदल चलते हैं उनके लिए जगह नहीं है proper. And those we have even created on that pedestrian path, we are seeing the two-wheelers are moving. So that's also an infrastructure gap we are seeing. Another one, which is also very prominent one, is about the trauma care deficit. What it talks about, only 60% of national highways have access to the emergency medical care within the golden hour after an accident. So the golden hour is basically a 1 hour time period between the accident. So if a person can reach in that, can be approached to the hospital, there's a possibility that the person can be saved. But this trauma care facility is not available in the case of in 60% of highways. The states like Bihar, Odisha, Jharkhand show the double fatalities rates due to the delayed response. What are the reforms measures we can and suggestions we can make? Institutional level, there is a proposal for creating a license Seva Kendra, like we have Passport Seva Kendra, to improve the transparency, skill assessment, and road safety training. There should be strict enforcement of Motor Vehicle Amendment Act, especially provisions on the road safety audits, electronic monitoring, and heavy penalties for the violations. Infrastructure and technology level, there should be installation of collision risk warning system and energy adoption barriers on highways, mandatory fitment of speed limiters and anti-locking braking systems in commercial vehicles, adoption of smart traffic management and AI-based monitoring, which is already piloted in Delhi and Bangalore. Public health approach, strengthening the trauma care networks under the National Road Safety Board, integration with 𝐼𝐸 Bharat Emergency Care Program to ensure free trauma care within 1 hour of accident. Let's move to our next news article, that is about the malleable code of conduct. So it's talking about the model code of conduct. If we see, the model code of conduct is basically the voluntary guidelines agreed upon by the political parties to regulate their behavior during the elections. When it comes into the force, when there is a date of election announcement till the results been declared. So it's keep in enforcement during this time period. What are the key provisions? The key provisions are that it restricts the ruling party to announce a new policy or any financial grants or any leading any foundation store after the announcement of election or when the MCC is in enforce. Because the idea is to create a level playing field among all political parties. It also bars the ministers from using the official position for the electoral advantages. The whole idea is that if we know that election is going to be happen within 1 month or 2 months, and the government comes up with a new policy or a new program, so that is going to influence the minds of the voters. And it will create a disadvantage to the opposition party. So to create a level playing field that even the opposition parties have an equal chances and treated fairly in the elections. So these model code of conducts are being enforced so that ruling party does not take the undue advantage of the government. The legal nature of this MCC is that it is non-statutory in nature. That means it is not legally enforceable. However, the violation involves like hate speech, bribery, or misuse of official machinery can be charged under various other acts like Representation of People Act 1951 or Indian Penal Code. So MCC as per is not a legally binding. It does not have the legal backing. But if somebody is violating, the few provisions can be dealt with the various other laws. And the thing is, the enforcement depends largely on moral authority and political consensus. It's not basically that it's not backed by law, so it doesn't mean that it is not effective. It's basically a moral authority and the political consensus. The debate around its legal as well as institutional. In 2013, the Parliamentary Standing Committee suggested that we should make MCC legally binding to increase its effectiveness. But Election Commission of India opposed it, citing the short election timeline, because they wanted to wrap up the elections within as much as minimum time period. For example, 45 days. But if it is a legal backing, if it's violates, so obviously on the violation of law, you have to approach the court. And we know that once you go to the court, it will be a lengthy judicial process. So that will hamper the election process. That's why Election Commission opposed the making it legally binding. Experts argue that the moral breaches of MCC is hard to regulate through the law, because we know that it's more like moral authorities, moral constraints we are putting out on the political parties or the contestant who are contesting the elections. And to make it enforceable, regulating through the law, those moral breaches is going to be very difficult to judge whether it's legally correct or not. The current discussion is about that some scholars propose removing the sections of MCC restricting the new government schemes given the frequent breaches and the push for simultaneous election to reduce the frequent MCC freezes. Here, what it is saying that some scholars says that when we have seen that when MCC comes into the force, the government cannot start any new scheme, cannot propose any new policy, and it's created freezes in our governance. So some scholars is suggesting that these sections can be removed so that government can efficiently function. However, this could weaken the electoral fairness further unless the strong institutional checks are introduced. Though they are making the statement, they have some merits, but the counterpoint is that it will weaken the electoral fairness because the ruling party will try to take the advantage in the elections by announcing new policies, new schemes just before the elections. There are few quotes which has been used in this article. So we can read out like B.R. Ambedkar said, however a good constitution may be, it is sure to turn out bad if those who are called to work it happen to be bad a lot. Another one, 𝐻𝐭𝐚𝐿, it is much more important to kill the bad laws than to pass the good ones. Let's move to our next news article that is about what constitutes as a contempt of court in India. So as we have seen the recent controversy over the derogatory remarks against the Chief Justice of India. So it's talked about the contempt of court. So first of all, the constitutional basis of this. So Article 19(2) mentioned the contempt of court word, and it mentioned in the exceptions, the reasonable restrictions on freedom of speech. The contempt of court created a debate over your freedom of speech versus respect and authority of judiciary. So in Article 19 and 2, to create a balance, it says that there is a reasonable restrictions on your freedom of speech in case of contempt of court. Article 129 and 215, 129 related to the Supreme Court and 215 is related to the High Court. They says that the Supreme Court and High Court are the court of record with the power to punish its contempt. What is a court of record means? There are the two things. It means the records are the authoritative evidences. The records of the court, of Supreme Court and High Court are authoritative evidences. Second, it has an inherent power to punish for the contempt. The definition of contempt of court is mentioned in Contempt of Court Act 1971. It talks about there are two types of contempt. One is civil contempt under Section 2B and another one is criminal contempt under Section 2C. Civil contempt says that when there is a willful disobedience of any judgment, decree, direction, order, or breach of undertaking given to the court will be considered as a civil contempt. So here they are saying that if you are not following the judgment, degree or directions or orders of the court, then we will consider it as a civil contempt. Another one is a criminal contempt under section 2C. What it says? Any act that scandalizes and lowers the authority of any court. Remember that any court, even the subordinate court also. Prejudice or interferes with the judicial proceedings, interferes with the administration of justice, then it will be considered as a criminal contempt. Means if when there is a the judicial proceeding is going on and you are creating the disruption or interfering in the proceedings, in that case it will be considered criminal court. Plus, if you are lowering the authority of court by making some speeches or publishing your articles or in public domain and criticizing the government, the judiciary, then it will be considered as a contempt of court and under criminal contempt. The thing which we have to keep in note is that contempt is not about the personal criticism. It is to protect the dignity and authority of judicial process. What is the procedure? The court can initiate the proceedings suo moto also. So the court has an authority that if they find that anybody or any person who has made any speech or make any remark regarding the court and it is lowering its authority, then court has a power to initiate the contempt of court proceeding on their own. That is the suo moto power. Other can also have a move a petition only with the prior consent of Attorney General or Advocate General. So if third person wants to file the contempt of court, that can also happen, but they have to take the prior consent of Attorney General for Supreme Court and Advocate General for the High Court. There are few important judgments which on this contempt of court and also tell us what is exactly the stand of judiciary on this issue. So in 𝐼𝐸𝐴 𝐸𝐻 versus Aurobindo Bose 1952, the Supreme Court said that fair criticism of judgment is allowed. Beyond that may invite the contempt. So you can criticize the judgment. There could be the possibility that you might not be satisfied with judgment. So you have the provision for the appeal also, review also. So you can do a fair criticism, but it should not be absurd. It should not be to scandalize the court. In Anil Ratan Sarkar versus 𝐼𝐸𝐴 𝐸𝐻 2002, the Supreme Court said that power to punish must be exercised cautiously. And in 2015, 𝐿𝐵 Jayaranjan versus High Court of Kerala, they says that abusive speech against judicial order amounts to the criminal contempt. So here in 1952, fair criticism is allowed, but not abusive speech. Recently, in 2025, the Shanmugam Lakshmi Narayan versus High Court of Madras. The purpose of the court contempt action is to ensure the smooth administration of justice, not to silence the legitimate dissent. The whole idea is that if you have any dissent, if you want to do a fair criticism, yes, it is allowed. But you cannot use abusive languages, abusive speeches, and you cannot lower the authority. Because once the confidence of the people or the public lose in the judiciary, then Supreme Court or any court will become irrelevant. So how we are going to balancing those principles? So we have to democratic critique versus judicial sanctity. So democratic critique is permissible so long as it does not undermine the public confidence in judiciary. Constitutional morality, the free speech must coexist with the respect to the judicial independence, key for maintaining the rule of law and substantive justice. So that's all from this news article. Let's move to the next news article. That is regarding the challenges facing the upcoming income survey. So basically, India is going to conduct its first ever household income survey in 2026. The initiative aims to provide a direct measures for the household level income, expenses, and economic well-being. What it is going to measure? So obviously, as it is an income, so it is going to measure the income. But what are those incomes being considered? Salaries, bonus, overtime, stock options, casual wages, profit from the self-employment, tips, and agriculture sale. Expenses, what are those components of expenses in this survey? Farming input cost, raw material, the expenses, the expenditure you are making on the raw materials, rent, repairs, and the loan repayment, transfers, remittances, pensions, alimony, or any government benefits. Assets and liabilities are also considered under this survey. So these are land, dwelling type loans, and savings. These are considered because it is help us to understand the debt burden and EMI based consumption pattern also. Why this survey matters? First of all, it provides us with a comprehensive data, means it will assess the income from all sources. As we have seen that has been very comprehensively. It's not just limited to the salaries, it is also considering the salaries, the profits from the self-employment, agriculture also. So regular salaries, self-employment, agriculture, government transfers. So very comprehensive survey it is going to conduct. Policy relevance, because it allows evaluation of the claims like doubling the farmer income and impact of the welfare schemes. What does it mean? It means that the government comes up with the various schemes, various policies, like we have to double the farmer income by 2022. But whether the farmer's income has been increased by 2022 or by any target year, how we are going to assess this? We are going to assess this because when we have a data, and this household survey, income household survey is going to provide this data, and that will help us to identify that whether this policy is relevant or not, whether this policy has been effective or not, whether the income has been increased or not. Another one is understanding the inequalities, that is enable the analysis of income distribution across region, caste, religion, and occupation. Similar types of surveys have also been conducted, but they are not comprehensive. So it will complement the existing surveys like PLFS, Periodic Labor Force Survey, that focus on the labor market indicator, but not the total household incomes. Another one is HCES, Household Consumption Expenditure Survey. It infers the income from the consumption, which can be misleading because it's talking more about the consumption. So we don't know that how the consumption is there because we have no idea about the income. So that could be a misleading, that could not give us the clear picture. Another one is RBI also conduct a consumer confidence survey, which tracks the feeling about the income, not actual data. But this survey has been pilotly tested in random household, but there were certain challenges which this survey faced. So what are those challenges? The challenge was regarding the high sensitivity. Around 95% respondents were uncomfortable sharing their income details, especially about the taxes, because they fear that if they reveal their income details, so they might bring up the tax authority might catch them. So they were uncomfortable, around 95%. And there is on the joke side, कहा जाता है कि किसी की सैलरी भी नहीं पूछनी चाहिए, तो highly sensitive thing है. Another one is an accuracy issue. Many respondent overstate the expense or underreport the incomes. Difficulty in recalling the interest or assets income. मतलब किसी के पास इतना पैसा है कि वो भूल गए कि कहाँ से कितना पैसा है. ठीक है? So they have a difficulty in recalling also, so which also question the accuracy of the survey. Another one is a trust and privacy concern. Income questions seen as an intrusive. Affluent household particularly hesitant, कि उनको कहीं ये डर है कि might be those survey people might be thief, है ना, कि वो reveal करेंगे हमारे पास इतना पैसा है और फिर बाद में चोरी हो जाए. Another one is regarding the response bias. So here we are seeing a difference where the rural respondents were more forthcoming than urban elites. तो जो शहर के थे urban elites, they were hesitant in sharing their income. जबकि होता यह है कि वो शो ऑफ सबसे ज़्यादा वही लोग करना पसंद करते हैं, बट यहाँ पे थोड़ा सा उल्टा हो रहा है. ठीक है? What is the proposed remedies? The local language and enumerators for the trust building, public awareness campaigns on survey confidentiality, and possible self-completion option for the gated societies and affluent groups. So if in case they are not comfortable in sharing their details with anyone, so they can also come up with their self-compilation options also. The broader context and an implication of this survey is that there is a data deficiency in policies. India's income distribution data has a major gap. The last direct effort was the National Sample Survey Mixed Income Studies decade ago. So a decade ago, we made the last mixed income studies. So there is a data deficiency in our policy. It will help us in economic planning because household income survey can refine the poverty estimates, guide the tax policies, welfare design, and social sector targeting. If we talked about the international practices, many developed nations like US has a current population survey. UK family resource surveys regularly collect such income data, and India's HIS household income survey will be comparably globally. So this practice has been done by the various developed countries also. So that's all for today's news article. Thank you for joining.